Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. My name is Jemima Nyakongo, and I'm the interim coordinator for HomeNet International, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I'd like to take this chance to invite Sister Laura to share with us the housekeeping rules and also provide the interpretation instructions. Welcome, Sister Laura.
Thank you, Jemima. Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura Revelo, H&I Communications and Media Officer. Thank you for joining us today. I will share the language instructions. Today we have interpretation in different languages. The main language we will be presenting in will be in English, though we have interpretation in Spanish, Russian, Thai, and Hindi. If you go to the bottom of the globe, of the Zoom app, you will find a globe icon with interpretation where you can click on that icon and you will have a display that will show up the different languages. Just click on that and you will be able to choose your language. The same thing if you're using your mobile phone, just go to the three dots on the bottom and click more and another display will show up with the different languages. If you have any issues with interpretation, do write it directly in the chat and we will try to do our best to solve the problem. I'd like to also thank those who are attending and seeing us through the NGO CSW WOVA portal. If you have any questions or any issues, also do write it in the WOVA portal messaging app, and we will try to troubleshoot as well. And thank you. I will pass it back to Jemima.
Thank you, Laura. That was very helpful. HomeNet International, through its Gender Committee, is hosting this virtual side session as part of the NGO Commission on the Status of Women's 70th Forum. And we are honored to have Sister Josephine Ole Parila, the president of HomeNet International and of Patamamba, workers in the informal sector enterprise in the Philippines with us. Sister Olive also holds key positions within HomeNet Philippines and HomeNet Producers Cooperative. She will now offer the official welcome and share the objective of today's webinar. Welcome, Sister Olive.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. First of all, I would like, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to greet you all a happy Women's Month. As we celebrate the International Women's Month, I would like you to remember that being a woman, we're not just mothers, sisters, or wives, but being a woman, we are strong, has the power to lead. We stood as pillars of wisdom and strength. We are leaders, healers, advisors, and guardians of knowledge. We lead our communities with courage, compassion, and vision. We will see this leadership in many ways. Being an economic manager, doing unpaid care and domestic work, and community volunteerism, we women are extraordinary and we are all superwomen. This year's celebration is not only about honoring the achievement of women, but also a call for action. Empowering women means creating spaces where they can lead, participate, and make meaningful contribution to progress and development. I am delighted to welcome you all to our parallel event at this year's NGO CSW70 Forum on behalf of HomeNet International. HNI or HomeNet International is a global network of membership-based home-based workers organization representing over 1.5 million home-based workers from 71 organizations across 30 countries. A warm welcome to all home-based workers, brothers and sisters, and their organization, to our supporters, allies, and everyone joining us today for our session on advancing justice on the ground, the work of home-based workers organization. Millions of home-based workers, most of whom are women, lack recognition as workers by government and employers. Their exclusion from labor laws creates a major barrier to securing their rights at work and accessing remedies when those rights are violated. Today's session will highlight how home-based workers organization step in where legal system fall short, supporting workers in their pursuit of justice through capacity building, advocacy, and support services such as safe spaces, counseling, and legal aid. This organization play a critical role in empowering workers. Their experiences demonstrate why organizing as the first step toward access to justice for home-based workers, especially women, and why strengthening this organization are vital or very essential. You'll have the opportunity to hear from home-based workers, leaders, and leaders of home-based workers organization from Argentina, India, Vietnam, Philippines, and Uganda, who will be sharing their initiative in supporting workers and fill the gaps where government system and protections are not reaching them. As we move forward, we embody the spirit to lead with wisdom, to stand with courage, and to serve with compassion. We likewise extend our heartfelt gratitude to our partners, resource speakers, and participants who made this session possible. Let us carry the inspiration of today's activity beyond this event. Together, let us continue to uplift, empower home-based workers in every single day. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all. I will now hand it over to Jemima Nyakongo, our interim coordinator, who will be moderating the whole session. Thank you, Jemima, and good day to all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Oli, for that warm welcome. Now that we are settled, let's dive into our conversation. Our webinar is titled Advancing Justice on the Ground, the work of home-based worker organizations. Millions of home-based workers, the majority of whom are women, struggle for recognition as workers by governments and employers. Their exclusion from labor laws is a major barrier to securing their rights at work and accessing the remedies when those rights are violated. Essentially, home-based workers are invisible in the law. So to shed light on this issue, I will now invite Krithika Dinesh, a legal empowerment specialist with women in the informal employment, globalizing and organizing. Krithika has over a decade of experience supporting collective and movements in the building advocacy strategies using legal empowerment methods. At WIGO, she focuses on developing worker-centered legal empowerment approaches through co-designed research, workshops, and educational materials, including research on climate justice and the legal and organizing strategies of workers, particularly home-based workers in the supply chains. So Krithika will enlighten us on the reasons why home-based workers often lack legal protection. Welcome, Krithika, and you have 15 minutes to share with us.
Thank you so much, Jemima. And good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all of you. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with you of how home-based workers are invisible in law and subsequently lack legal protection and rights. So today I will be talking about three broad things. First, very quickly, I'll spend some time on discussing who are home-based workers, then on the legal exclusions they face, and what we can do in building an enabling framework for home-based workers. On to the next slide. So who are home-based workers? To the next slide. Home-based workers are two different categories there are two different categories of home-based workers, which I know most of you would be familiar with, but just to give a quick recap. The first category are those home-based workers who are self-employed or own account workers, and they essentially are in charge of their own sourcing of raw materials, design, production, selling to the market, etc. And the second category, which I'll be spending more time in this presentation, are the subcontracted home-based workers, who are also known as home workers or piece rate workers. And their work is usually provided through a series of intermediaries. They might be working for a big brand, but it is often not clear. The supply chain is not very clear because there are a series of intermediaries between them: subcontractors, contractors, factories, export houses, suppliers, etc. And these workers work on a range of things. Just to give you an example, they might be fixing the zippers on jeans, putting laces on shoes, adding buttons, doing some finishing work, trimming clothes, labeling, folding. So they could work on a whole product, or many of them are usually working on part of a product and are paid on a piece rate basis. And the amount of work is also not consistent. It varies seasonally, and hence there are usually no fixed hours or contracts that these workers have. And the commonality between these two sets of workers are that they work from home or from around homes in their neighborhoods. And as you can see, there are globally more than 260 million home-based workers, and they form 7.9% of global employment. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, this is just a graph of where home-based workers are based so that you can get a sense of it. As you can see, there are a lot of home-based workers in Southeast Asia, South Asia, Southern Africa, Southern America, etc. Coming to the legal exclusions that home-based workers face, into the next slide and the next. Thank you. I would just like to, before we talk about the exclusion home-based workers specifically face, talk about what labor law is and just a few definitions that will help us understand better how home-based workers are excluded. So labor law is essentially has been forged as a sort of social contract between owners of capital and organized labor. And what it essentially does is categorize workers into different categories. And this is, of course, varies country to country and according to context, but just to very broadly and generally say, there is one category which are called employees, and these are workers who are usually understood traditionally as workers who are permanent, who are full-time, who work on the premises of the employer. There's like a direct supervision and control aspect that's understood to be there, and there's a direct contractual relationship with the employer. The other set of workers in labor law in many times are assumed to be independent. They might be working for one employer or multiple employers, but they're assumed to have a certain degree of independence with how they provide the service, the time they put in, the contractual terms under which they sort of work under. And what this essentially does is most of the home workers are usually identified as legally and sometimes even statistically as independent contractors. So they're excluded from this definition of employees. And that essentially excludes them from all the labor rights and protections that labor law offers to employees. Employees, for instance, have the very important rights of organizing and collective bargaining. So the right to form trade unions, the right to strike, the right to participate in collective bargaining processes. It's all sort of excluded if a home worker in their home country is not recognized as an employee. And they're also excluded from the basic working conditions that employees are entitled to in terms of wages, the hours, rest periods, leaves, the termination processes that's there in labor laws, the dispute redressal mechanisms that's there. The next slide, please. Here we can see what it really does, the exclusion that I was talking about. If, for example, you are recognized as an employee in law, you have the right to organize, the right to strike, and you are sort of automatically have the right to be part of the collective bargaining process. You have a seat at the table. You are part of policy reform processes in forming collective bargaining agreements. And on the other hand, if you're in law recognized as an independent contractor, then the forms of organizing differs. You might be able to only form an association or other forms of organizations like membership-based organization or community-based organization. And you don't have a formal collective bargaining process that you can access. There might be other ones that you forge over the years, but it's not set in the labor law process. And there's no automatic access to labor dispute resolution that you get. On to the next slide, please. And this is not to say that home workers across the world have no legal rights at all. There are countries, there are examples where home worker organizations have organized and struggled and really brought in laws in certain countries. But overall, the level of legal inclusion is very low. I cannot give you exact numbers, but we can sort of get a sense of it from the level of ratification of Convention 177. Convention 177 exclusively deals with homework, and 13 countries globally have sort of ratified it, which is a very low level of ratification. But like I said before, organizations have sort of advocated, organized, and struggled and brought in legislations or fought for inclusion in labor laws. For instance, there are specific legislations. These are not part of labor laws, but a specific legislation that's made just for home workers that's been brought in, for example, in Thailand, Pakistan. And there are also inclusions within labor law in some countries. These are only a few examples. There are a few more, but in Philippines, for example, in the 1970s itself, home workers were included within labor laws. In Bulgaria, which has also ratified C177, has included home workers within labor laws. But in practice, it's still challenging because the government, employers, they don't consider home workers mostly as workers. And this fight for inclusion, as I mentioned, is difficult, and it's taken decades in many instances. And the specific laws that's been brought in, they might not have, the same degree of protection and rights as labor law gives. And the second is the collective representation. As I mentioned earlier, there are some organizations of home workers which have been successfully been able to register as trade unions. And one example is in Pakistan, where they have, through over a decade of organizing, fought to register as a trade union, where they had to really fight perceptions from the government departments, from fellow trade unionists, from other worker organizations that, that we are workers, we are employees, and we have the right to form a trade union.
У
And
нас
in
есть право
many other
участвовать.
cases, home workers, if either they are not legally allowed to form a trade union, or it is easier to do other forms of organizing, they have formed community-based organizations, membership-based organizations, leaders of which who you'll be hearing from today. But this does not in practice, in many instances, give access to the collective bargaining processes or forums for negotiating their rights. Next slide, please. Yeah. And this exclusion from being employees also impact the working conditions of home workers. They are mostly in a constant state of job insecurity because agreements are usually verbal and there is no formal wage setting processes. Some countries which have laws have some wage setting processes for home workers because, for instance, in Thailand, there is a wage-setting process which can ensure that the piece rates are sort of equivalent, at least to the minimum wage in the country. But largely, when home workers are excluded from labor laws and other laws, they sort of fall into informal negotiations with subcontractors. And as I mentioned earlier, there is no set or permanency in work. So there are no set hours, rights such as right to leave, rest periods, right to social security systems that employees enjoy are not there. There is some social protection that home workers and home-based workers, the self-employed, enjoy because they have access to sort of wider social assistance programs of the government or welfare programs. And just to give you a sense, on the right side, you can see a table which, shows how much access home-based workers and home workers have for social protection in their countries. It's, in some cases as low as 0.8%, as you can see. And in India, for example, home workers have 5.8% of them have access to social protection. And it also creates a very blurry line of how sexual harassment at workplaces are sort of legislated and enforced within these spaces, because homes are generally not considered as workplaces. And if home workers are not considered as workers, how does protection of against sexual harassment look like in these cases? And how can there be access to remedies in these cases? Access to remedies in countries where there is some inclusion in labor laws, they have access to the labor law mechanisms, but it's still very difficult to actually access it for home workers, because even in instances where they've tried to complain, they've had to drop the complaints because there is difficulty to go to these central locations. There's high level of intimidation. There's almost an immediate withdrawal of work that's seen. Work goes from one neighborhood to another if there is a threat of complaint, etc. And so there needs to be, which we'll talk about later, is a rethinking of how dispute mechanisms can be brought closer to home workers and be much more accessible. And in countries where there is a law for home workers, either in labor laws or specific laws, the enforcement is still very weak. There are, of course, some examples, like we've seen in Australia, there is some success in enforcement, but it is still very weak. And this sort of speaks again to the invisibility of home workers in law and practice. On to the next slide, please. I can see I'm running out of time. Next slide, please. So just to conclude, what would building an enabling legal framework for home workers look like? As I mentioned, it includes... can I take 2 more minutes, Jemima?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you.
It means inclusion in labor laws, and along with inclusion in labor laws, we will have to sort of rethink and reimagine how labor laws can be, because traditionally it is seen as regulating factories and sort of more direct contractual relationships. So how can it be rethought when homes are seen as workplaces? How can more accessible dispute redressal mechanisms be designed? Can there be, for example, representation of unions or home worker organizations for taking up complaints so that the identity of the workers are protected? Or can there be a surety or a job guarantee in case complaints are sort of put forward? And for ensuring enforcement, because home workers are part of larger supply chains, the level of enforcement is also more complex. We need, for example, transparency across the supply chains about the volume of production, the number of factories, workers that's there, where it's outsourced. And this has been quite successfully used for enforcement in Australia, where they've used the data of companies and their volume and value of production to actually identify the missing home workers. And unions and home worker organizations need to have the right to information to access these transparency and documents. And they also need to have the right to representation for actually enforcing in terms of either for dispute redressal mechanisms or for inspections of workplaces. Next slide, please. And as mentioned in the beginning, it also requires the empowerment of the workers that we are working with, and there needs to be sort of an access to resources or organizing rights that worker organizations can access, which can be used to build the legal awareness of workers to use the laws. Because even where laws have come in place, in some instances, we have found that these laws still remain in the hands of very few and in very select offices, but doesn't actually reach the workers. So how can we bridge that access to justice gap? And because, again, home workers and home-based workers are particularly located and working within their homes, the range of concerns are also broader. So how do we ensure through law the access to infrastructure for better housing, access to water, sanitation, transport? And when we recognize homes as workplaces and informal settlements where usually home workers live in as sites of economic activity, how can we integrate this
Ritika,
recognition
kindly wind
in,
up. Kindly
yes,
wind up.
in urban planning laws, in zoning laws, for example, and broadly for all the home-based workers, the self-employment, how can we ensure access to markets, credit, and training in laws? Okay, that is it, and I hope we can discuss it further later. Thank you.
So with an understanding of who home-based workers are, the legal exclusions that the home-based workers face, including recognition and lack of organization and the collective representation and bargaining, and also the interventions that we can do in building and enabling legal frameworks. I hope we are all still together, and we are now going to move to panel discussions to highlight on how home-based work organizations step in where legal systems fall short, supporting workers to highlight how home-based worker organizations step in where legal systems fall short, supporting workers in their pursuit of justice. And these organizations empower workers through capacity building, they empower workers through advocacy, and also support services such as the safe spaces, the counseling, and also the legal aid. To our panelists, you will each have 8 minutes to share your strategies. And to our participants, kindly post your questions if you have any, as the panelists will be intervening. And we will also create a chance for you to address the questions that you will have posted. So our first speaker is Jacqueline Serrano, a seamstress based in Argentina. She is the national representative of the Sewing and Garment Workers Cooperative Federation of Argentina and the spokesperson for Capincho, a collective clothing brand. She's also a member of the HomeNet International's Gender Committee. Thank you so much, Sister Jacqueline, for joining us. So I will start by asking you, Sister Jacqueline, can you tell us about your journey being part of the Federation of Cooperative of Seamstresses, the workers of the garment and textile sector in Argentina, and how it has supported the home-based workers who are facing violence and livelihood issues, many of whom are migrants from Bolivia? Welcome.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for giving us the space to give visibility to what we are doing in Argentina. Let me tell you about how we are organizing. In 2016, most of our sisters, we are home-based workers and we used to work 24/7. We used to start at 4 a.m. and we would stay up to midnight in order to work and be able to pay for utilities. In 2016, we met the MTE, the Movement of Excluded Workers. And through that, we started organizing meetings and we started getting together to work together at a warehouse, which is a productive pole. And we work together there with no employers, and we can control our schedules because most of our sisters have small children. So we are 40 sisters working together, and we are actually throughout Argentina. In my district, in the province of Buenos Aires, the area of Almirante Brown, most of the sisters that work with us are from Bolivia. And we decided then to organize ourselves, and we uh, were actually receiving a subsidy from the government that was 10,000 pesos per month. We as an organization then wondered, instead of working from home, why don't we work together at a warehouse to avoid accidents or problems or fire risks? And actually, in 2015, there was a fire where many children and families passed away. So we wanted to organize to be able to avoid accidents and fires. So when we started receiving this subsidy called Potenciar, we were like, we don't want to rent a space. We want our own space. We don't want to pay rent. So in 2016 and 2017, we were saving a lot of money, and then we were able to purchase a plot of land. And there was like a little house. So um, since the house was too small and we were 40 sisters, we couldn't work there because it was a very small room, 3 by 4 meters. So we were using that space as a soup kitchen to give breakfast and tea to the children of our vulnerable areas. During the pandemic, we decided to work because there were no resources whatsoever. With lockdowns, we couldn't work. So, thanks to our textile federation and thanks to our brothers, sisters, and leaders, thanks to them, we were able to rent a warehouse and we were able to work. What we really perceived as a difference was working from home and working together somewhere else. Well, the main change there was removing intermediaries. When we were working by ourselves, um, we were paid a lot less money, but after working in an organized way, I mean, in the past, if we were working from home, we would make only 1.5 pesos, but working together and organized, we were able to make 85 pesos per item. Also, we were able to have health insurance. We were able to be independent, and also we were no longer depending on our partners. Many of our sisters were suffering from gender-based violence because their partners were controlling their money, they were controlling their schedules, they were controlling what they were spending money on. And also, they were like, oh no, I won't give you the money. So we were empowered, after organization. So thanks to this female-led organization, we were able to organize ourselves, we were able to become independent, we were able to manage our own income, and also we were able to have free time during the weekends so that we could enjoy with our children. We were like, okay, I can work 8 or 8 times depending on what my sisters were going to do, but then we would have some time for leisure and enjoy our families. And through our federation, we started to receive decent salaries and we were able to remove intermediaries. We were able to have the monotributo, the special tax system that was helpful for us. And we were able to then have health insurance. Well, we had health insurance because with the new government, things are terrible. But I would say that organizing ourselves really changed our lives. We were able to have childcare centers with a place for our children to be taken care of while we work. We have a community center for childcare where they receive food, education. Also, the union. We have a union fighting for our rights. And many people say, oh, yeah, you are parasites. You're receiving subsidies from the state. But that's not the case. We are working hard. We are there uh, doing and manufacturing clothes for workers. We are creating clothes for workers from the health sector, the education sector. So we are working and we are also paying taxes. And let me tell you now about what is happening now, because after the pandemic, we were able to organize ourselves and things were better. But in 2023, the new government took office and things really changed. All the things that we have achieved through fighting, because this was actually a fight. We were all working together and fighting, not only in the textile sector, waste pickers, street vendors, many brothers and sisters were fighting and were able to acquire rights. But in 2023, things changed. Our health insurance was removed. Our monotributo system was removed. They closed the soup kitchens for our children. They were going against the subsidies for people with disabilities. They were going against the elder. I mean, this new government, this new president is really going after us and vulnerable populations. During the pandemic, we created our brand called Carpincho, and I know that I'm saying a lot, but I know that I don't have much time, so I'm mixing things a little bit. Um, this brand called Carpincho that we created, uh, I mean, we are the ones doing everything for this is a garment brand. And what you see here on this picture is a plot of land that we bought. And let me tell you something. Through the popular neighborhood survey system, we were able to obtain the resources to build here this warehouse. So we had this empty plot of land, but then we were able to build this warehouse and we were able to organize our meetings there. And we know that things are hard these days because rents are very expensive in Argentina. They're up by 300%. Taxes are very expensive too. Transportation, buses and trains are very expensive and things are so complicated. We used to be 80 productive units all over the country, but only 40 are now trying to survive because the situation here is so sad, so terrible. Factories are closing. There's a lot of unemployment. We are trying to resist. We don't want to rent. We want to try and maintain our own space so we don't have to pay for rent. We are struggling, but resources are scarce because this government is also cutting on all the possible subsidies that we were able to receive. government now is working for other sectors, not for us.
Kindly
We are
wind up.
doing our
Kindly wind
best.
up. Kindly wind up.
Yeah, I'm about to close.
Okay.
Well, yeah, this is it. We are struggling. We are struggling a lot, and resources to fight against gender-based violence are scarce because the government also decided to remove all gender-based violence-related programs. We had three sisters who passed away, and actually one of my sisters had cancer and passed away because the government decided to stop paying for her treatment. And she really worked until the very last day. She stood up to the very last day. You know why? Because she had a 12-year-old kid. And this president doesn't know how much we are suffering because our sisters are putting their body and soul to fight for their children. We just want decent work, and we are going to keep on fighting every day. We are still fighting. We are still doing our best, brothers and sisters here. I'm sorry if I'm getting moved, but because I'm trying to represent all my brothers and sisters who are behind me are struggling too. In April, they're not going to keep on paying subsidies to us, and I don't know what will happen with us because many of our brothers and sisters will be left out without resources. There's a very high unemployment rate, and please, if you are everywhere, try to make this viral, because there's so much unemployment here. Things are so hard, food is so expensive, and there are so many people who are becoming homeless. So this is what I wanted to tell you what we are doing and to tell you that things are so hard here. But we are here with our sisters, and we want to be able to finish that warehouse that we were building. So if someone can help us and support us so that we can fulfill this dream, that'd be great because we want to keep on working. There are families behind us. There are families with people with disabilities and diseases and many things that probably you know about too. And probably you have brothers and sisters in the same situation. So yeah, thank you so, so much for giving visibility to all of this. Thank you, everyone. And hugs from Argentina to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Jacqueline. Thank you for sharing that insight that clearly projects how home-based worker organizations are empowering workers through support systems like the safe spaces to work. And may the soul of our sister's soul rest in peace. And the struggle continues, and there is power in organizing for sure. Next, I will invite Lourdes Gula, a pioneer member of Patamaba, the National Network of Informal Workers in the Philippines. Lourdes has been a youth activist since the early 1970s, starting at the age of 16. For over 20 years, she has worked full-time as a home-based worker, sewing garments under subcontracting arrangements. Lourdes has volunteered for 36 years as an organizer for workers in the informal economy and continues to organize home-based workers today. She is former executive board member of HomeNet Southeast Asia and currently serves as the national president of Patamaba. Thank you, Lourdes, for joining us in today's conversations. And so we'd want to understand, how has Patamaba been supporting the empowerment of home-based workers? Welcome.
Thanks, Jemima. And good evening from the Philippines. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank HomeNet International for inviting us as one of the panelists with this webinar on advancing justice on the ground, the work of home-based workers organization. So to begin with, I would like to talk about the brief history of our organization. Next slide, please. So Patamaba was founded in 1989 as a grassroots organization run and managed by women home-based workers. It was registered at the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Labor and Employment under the Bureau of Labor Relations as a national organization of informal workers. 98% of the members are women, and it's located in 10 regions, 30 provinces with more than 300 chapters nationwide. Our members are composed of home-based workers, vendors, youth, small transport operators, small construction workers, and those working as service providers like village police, village health workers, and beauticians. According to 2022 research of Dr. Cabigin from the University of the Philippines, among the 50 million total labor force in the Philippines, 80% or almost 40 million are workers in the informal economy. At present, we only organize more than 70,000 members, including our networks in HomeNet Philippines, which we have almost 32 national, regional, provincial, and community civil society organizations. So next slide, please. So just to show you, this is some pictures of our members. Now, I would not talk about it. So next slide, please. So what is Patamaba vision? Our vision is a conscious and active empowerment of workers, including the poor, women, youth, and the underprivileged in the informal economy, in building a free, equal, and prosperous society, while our organization's mission is the advancement of the rights of workers and women in the informal economy. So, the picture you have seen there is our some of our activities. So next slide, please. What is the role of the government and the home-based workers organization in filling the gaps and supporting the home-based workers? Under the Labor Code of the Philippines, the provision on employment of industrial home workers can be found in Book 4, Title 3, Chapter 4. The implementing rules and regulation of Chapter 4, Employment of Home Workers, was signed in 1992 and is popularly known as Department Order Number 5 of 1992. So DO5 affirms the right of home workers to self-organization. But in practice, in reality, this is not successful. Why? Because when we did a pilot testing in one of the cases regarding payment on the orders, it was not successful because due to the hearing process, the time the home-based workers spent coming back and forth to the hearings because they have to leave their jobs and would not have any income for the family's daily needs. And aside from the money they spent every hearing, so it's not being used. Next slide, please. So what are the Philippines has several laws that target aspects of the informal economy, but the implementation is very low. This was already said by first speaker. Some examples include the Republic Act 8425 or the Social Reform and Poverty Alleviation Act, the first national legislation to recognize the informal sector through its inclusion as one of the basic sectors. It defines workers in the informal sector as poor individuals who operate businesses that are very small in scale and are not registered with any national government agency, and to the workers in such enterprises who sell their services in exchange for subsistence level wages or other forms of compensation. Other bills are RA 11291 or the Magna Carta of the Poor in 2019, RA 9710 or the Magna Carta of Women, which contains provisions on the right of marginalized women to access basic needs, decent work opportunities, protections from health hazards, as well as skills and capital. Next slide, please. So other laws are the RA 9501, the Magna Carta for micro, small and medium enterprises, RA 9178, known as the Act Establishing Barangay Micro Businesses Enterprises or BAMBIs, which encourages local government units to ease registration processes as well as exempt BAMBIs from income tax and coverage of the minimum wage law, provided that they still provide employees with social protection. There is a RA 10361 or the Domestic Workers Law, RA 11223 known as the Universal Healthcare Act in 2019 that ensures automatic PhilHealth enrollment for all Filipinos to access comprehensive, primary, preventative, rehabilitative, curative, and palliative health services. Next slide, please. Actually, there are many legislative policies and proposals related to the issues and concerns of each sector, but the problem is the prioritization, and when it became a law or a policy, the issue is about the implementation. Also, the monitoring and evaluation on how this was implemented. Another thing, marginalized sectors are having difficulties in accessing programs due to requirements which are not easy to provide. In addition, the negative effects of the economic crisis are seriously felt by the home-based workers, like high cost of basic commodities, electric bill, water, and the like, even the delivery of basic social services in the community, such as a consultation at the health center for women's reproductive health problems. It's very minimal, and in some cases, it's not for free. Next slide, please. What Patamabas programs are doing to empower home-based workers? First, participation in the management and in strengthening the organization through organizing, networking, and coalition building at the local, national, and international level. So we see to it that we have to organize especially the young. So that's why we have Patamaba Youth to be our second liner leaders, not as home-based workers, but as young advocates to continue our advocacies. Second, services for the enhancement and development of personal skills, awareness raising, education and training, including training on alternative livelihood and capacity development, gender, health, and reproductive rights. In livelihood assistance, we have Purple Market, an online and physical store for promoting home-based products. We have Village Savings and Loan Associations, a group enterprise introduced by our organization so that they will not get loan from other microfinancing institutions, social solidarity economy, business and market development through community-based economies through the formation of entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. There is one more slide. Thank you. And last but not least, lobbying, advocacy, and paralegal work, also building relationship with different NGO, government agencies, international agencies at the national, local, and international level, including trade unions and cooperatives, advocating for the ratification of ILC 177, which until now, this convention is not yet ratified. Then came the recommendation 204, the formalization of informal workers. And this is an ongoing process, especially with the Department of Labor and Employment and International Labor Organization here in Manila, together with the informal sectors group and other networks and alliances. Through the formation of a network, national network of home-based workers in the Philippines, the HomeNet Philippines, which is composed of 32 organizations of home-based workers and other workers in the informal economy, we drafted a bill together with our partners from the academe, policymakers, called Magna Carta of Workers in the Informal Economy, or the MACV bill. But sad to say, it's been 2 decades now, but still we are advocating for its passage. The bill is an act providing for a Magna Carta of Workers enterprise and organizations in the informal economy and institutionalizing mechanisms for transitioning to formal economy. So localization of the bill or local ordinances is also one of the initiatives of the organization to have policy on informal workers, at least within the community level, until the Magna Carta will be passed. So the last slide, I think it's already the last one. So thank you for listening. And these are some of the activities also we have done. The latest is the Conference on Women. Thank you very much. And I hope you get some information and sharings about the home-based workers working in the Philippines. Thanks, Jemima.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lourdes, for sharing how home-based work organizations are empowering workers through organizing, for lobbying, for advocacy, and also for the paralegal work. We really appreciate that information that you have shared with us. We are halfway through our panelists, and I will now invite Levanson, a member of the steering committee of Action Networks on Migrant Workers in Vietnam, with over 2 decades of experience working on gender-based related matters in Vietnam, particularly focusing on women and young girls. Thank you to Levanson for joining us today. Levanson, something is a problem with your audio. Let's try again. So in Vietnam, where a large proportion of workers are in the informal economy, how has capacity building for home-based work supported the organization's efforts towards greater recognition and support for home-based workers? Particularly, we'd appreciate if you could share specifically situation case on capacity building that has addressed violation. You're welcome, Levanson, if you can hear me.
Yes, can you hear?
Yes, that's better than the original audio. Yes, you can go ahead. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Introductions. Today's giving some introduction. Can you see my presentation?
It dropped off the screen. Yes, you are starting to share again. So there's something that is coming in.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So in my presentation, I would like to
Yes. Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, Levanson. Go ahead. Wind up. Thank you. Thank you so much, Levanson. Thank you for sharing with us how organizations empower workers through capacity building. I believe most of us can relate to this. Strong evidence and organizing groups are the foundation for recognition. Informed and skilled home-based workers can better protect their livelihoods, and visibility also drives to recognition. So thank you so much. So we are now moving on, and now to our last panelist, Stanley Kamoga, the founder and executive director of Children and Youth Empowerment Link, also known as KAYEL, a grassroots organization in Uganda. His commitment to gender equality, social justice, and community development drives him to be actively involved in creating a safer and more inclusive society in Uganda. Stanley, thank you and welcome to today's conversations. So could you kindly tell us about your organization, KAYEL, and the role it plays in supporting home-based workers? Welcome.
Thank you, Sister Jemima. Good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to share what we do as far as supporting social protection of the home-based workers, particularly in Uganda. Children and Youth Empowerment Link is a grassroots organization in Kampala, the capital city of Uganda, but also we have now our center in Nakaseke, one of the rural areas. So particularly, this is what we do in support in making sure that workers in the informal sector, the home-based workers, get social protection. We support home-based workers to access social protection through a comprehensive approach. This focuses on organization, recognition, collective bargaining, awareness creation, and access to service and accountability. In organization, what do? We support home-based workers to form groups and associations, the small groups on the villages to strengthen so that they can strengthen their collective voice and enable information sharing and increase the availability to attain their rights and social protection. Secondly, we also support recognition. Home-based workers operating in informal sector, as we know, and often invisible in the formal system. So this limits their access to social protection. So at KAYEL, what we do, we work to ensure that they are recognized in policies, programs, government structures, so that they can benefit in the available services. Now, the collective bargaining comes in when these organizations form groups. So this is what we do. Now, in developing countries like Uganda and most of the African countries, what governments do, they do what we call political accountability when you ask them about social protection. So like in Uganda, they often bring out structures like that are available at sub-counties, like the labor officers, the probation officers, the community development officers that exist on the sub-county levels. In practice, these officials are always present, but in the communities, they are often unaware of their existence roles. So they are always not even in offices. So this creates a gap where services are technically available, but practically inaccessible. So what we do to bridge this gap is by tracking this service delivery, documenting the challenges, facilitating dialogue between communities and duty bearers, and empowering citizens with information to demand for their rights. In simple terms, we make sure that the service shop is not only open on paper, but also visible. So access and actual service happens. I would like also to give uh, uh, to also tell you that we conduct community sensitization, public dialogue, engagement meeting to educate workers and about the social protection schemes and their rights and where they can access in the communities. I want to give a case study, and I would like to give it to some of the home-based workers in Uganda here. Did you know that by the law of the Uganda, if I can give an example of basket weavers that are very many, by law of Uganda, when we work with groups such as the basket weaver, and they have their product as baskets. So they supply these products through a middleman or a contractor who often referred as a broker. By law, when a worker produces goods worth more than 200,000 Ugandan shillings, the contractor or the broker is supposed to contribute 5% of the amount to the National Social Protection Fund, which is commonly known as NSSF in Uganda here, as part of social protection. So, however, in practice, many contractors avoid this responsibility by paying workers in cash, making sure that there is no any record, and structuring payment, especially through the banks. If they are paying them through the banks, they make sure that they don't pay you exceeding 200 Ugandan shillings thresholds. So this denies the workers their rights. So what do we do as Kayel? At Kayel, we make sure that we respond by raising awareness about these rights, supporting workers to organize and negotiate collectively, and advocating for their enforcement of this accountability. So by law, as I told you about about political accountability, by law the officials will tell you that this happens, but in action, when I can give an example, when Madame Sarah Nachiriowa produces her baskets, they make sure that they don't give money exceeding 200 Ugandan shilling, 200,000 Ugandan shillings, so that they don't contribute that 5% to the social protection. So by law, this sensitization we do, and we have success stories of groups that have started now organizing so that they can get that social protection. So in conclusion, Kayel approach ensures that home-based workers are recognized, informed, and empowered to access the social protection. We connect them to services and strengthen their voices and ensure that they benefit. So we also do this. We also work hand in hand to make sure that we prevent economic violence. This economic violence is so much on the vulnerable groups like the women. So in Uganda here we have the rights of owning land title, but often, and as you know, land is one of the factors of production. But this happens that there are some of the social protection funds that is available, but like even loans in the banks, but women cannot access them because they don't have land titles. So what we do is to make sure that we educate the families, the husbands, so that they can support their women access such funds. There is money like Grow Fund, there is UWEP for women, but many of women in their communities cannot access this money. Why? Because they don't have this collateral, the land titles, to access this. So we educate women, we educate men and women through the dialogues to make sure that they support their wives to access these funds, because when women grow economically, also the whole family grows. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jemima.
Thank you, Stanley. That was a job well done at the exact minute. So thank you so much for the conversation that has highlighted legal awareness and rights education as a key way that organizations extend justice to the home-based workers. We really appreciate you sharing that with us here today. So to all our wonderful panelists, please feel appreciated for sharing how your organizations have helped home-based workers when it is, in fact, the government's responsibility to provide justice. These organizations are critically filling the gap when the government has failed to do so. There are many more organizations that have facilitated workers' ability to navigate the justice system. And amidst our participants here today, we have organization representatives who would also like to share their story on the same. And I only have 2 minutes. So basically, that is just one more person who feels that our organization have done something totally different from what we have heard from the other panelists. And they can only take 2 minutes to share with us their intervention. If there's anybody, you can raise up your hand and I'll give you the space to share with us what you have. As I'm waiting for this particular person who's going to be touched and has something different to share with us, we have some questions that have been posted in the chat. And one of the questions that we have was posted to Krithika, and we've also got its response already. So Krithika was being asked and was being told, thank you so much for the very insightful presentation. It was truly enriching. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on how we might systematically document and learn from the emerging good practices in the 13 countries that have ratified Convention 177. These lessons could be incredibly valuable with strengthening advocacy efforts across Africa. And I can also read the response because Kritika has already posted it, and it says, thank you so much for the question. It's a good idea. We have some studies by different organizations that document some of the practices, but not one that focuses on C177 ratified countries. In WIGO, we documented some, not the ratified countries, but others. I will share the links. So we'll be hoping that the links are going to be shared. There's also another question that was posted to Lourdes from Tatiana. And this question was, is Patamaba a different organization from the Organization of Home-Based Workers? So we are being told that Patamaba is a national organization of home-based workers. Actually, since 1989 until 2002, they were registered as National Network of Home-Based Workers, not until 5th Congress in 2003, where they organized other workers in the informal economy, and they register again as a National Network of Informal Workers in the Philippines, but did not change the acronym Patamaba. So Patamaba is an affiliate member organization of HomeNet Philippines, and majority of Patamaba members are home-based workers. I will continue reading these questions because we are running out of time, and I believe this would be helpful. So there's also a question for all of us, and this is just a thought for all the participants, the panelists, and everybody in this call. And we are being asked, it's great that we are talking about problems, but what if those 500,000 members started working for themselves by creating a single international market? That's a food for thought, a very powerful one. There's also another question that is coming in, and the experiences shared from Argentina, the Philippines, the Vietnam offer valuable lessons, particularly on organizing home workers and advancing their recognition. And Martin would be interested in hearing further reflections and examples on how we can strengthen the power of collective organizing to better address the challenge of intermediary exploitation that is affecting most of the home-based workers. That's also a very powerful food for thought that we should be, as we wind up this webinar, we should be having some conversations around that. I have not seen anybody's hand, and so I believe that most of the organizations' representatives who are joining us today and have not had the chance to talk are also in agreement that so far those are some of the interventions that the home-based worker organizations are working to support the home-based workers in their search for justice. And so as we continue, we are going to be moving on to the next part, and this part is to sum up or maybe to wind up this session. And I'll be summarizing the key takeaways that we have from these discussions and generally from all the panelists that have talked. There is legal exclusions. Is somebody talking? All right, I'll continue. The key takeaways that we have had from these conversations is that the legal exclusion leads to poor working conditions. Many home-based workers face verbal or informal agreements. There's no guaranteed wages, no fixed hours of leave, limited or no social protection, no workplace safety protections, risk of harassment without complaint mechanisms, and threat of work withdrawal if they demand rights. However, without legal recognition, rights cannot be enforced. The current labor laws are designed for standard employment and excludes home-based workers. Home-based workers are labeled independent contractors and independent people who decide their own contractual terms. However, in reality, they are not considered as workers and either not included in labor laws, or in some countries, do not have access to all social protection provisions, as seen in examples of India, Mexico, and Argentina. We also see some progress, such as in the case of Pakistan and Bulgaria, Thailand, and Philippines, but it's limited. So though recognition exists, it's not enough. Home-based workers lack protection, not because laws do not exist, but because laws were not designed for them. And where laws are specific towards home-based workers, it is not implemented. Legal recognition, inclusion in labor laws, and enforcement of laws are essential to make their work visible and protected. Due to the lack of government and employer protection, many home-based worker organizations have taken up the role to protect and empower home-based workers, as we have heard from our panelists. In Argentina, Focoset is working towards creating a safe space, constructing a building for home-based workers to come together and work. In a country where the government is repressive, Focoset has been empowering women by sensitizing them on decent work, their rights, and also providing counseling. Thank you so much for that wonderful work that is being done in Argentina. In the Philippines, Patamaba has been working to sensitize home-based workers of the law, building their capacity and supporting livelihood, such as an online store to promote home-based workers' products. There's also the microfinance, social solidarity economy, and supporting home-based workers in business and market development. Good job to the Philippines as well. And then in Vietnam, where a large number of workers are in the informal sector, HomeNet Vietnam has been working on mapping home-based workers to understand their working conditions, support home-based worker groups to access market, social protection, sensitization on decent work, and their rights. That is providing legal awareness and skill development among many. In Uganda, Children and the Youth Empowerment Link, KAYEL, has been sensitizing informal workers, including home-based workers, about government social protection schemes, a responsibility that should normally be carried out by the government. But the organization also monitors whether government officials are fulfilling their duties, as many community members are not aware of how local government systems function. So to address the high levels of domestic violence in Uganda, the organization has been facilitating dialogues with men to encourage support for women home-based workers to engage in small businesses. And this has helped strengthen home women role as key contributors to the household livelihoods. So thank you so much, our panelists, for those wonderful strategies that you have shared with us. So we have seen, based on the above examples, how home-based worker organizations have stepped up where legal systems fall short, supporting workers in the pursuit of justice. This demonstrates why organizing is the first step towards access to justice for women home-based workers, and why these organizations must be strengthened. So as we are winding up, I want to invite Sister Tatiana, who has been actively involved in social work related to gender, women, unions, and LGBTIQ movements for over 20 years. She's currently a member of HomeNet International's Executive Committee, chair of HomeNet International Gender Committee, and one of the coordinators at Conotrado, Chile. Tatiana will close for us with a vote of thanks, and bye for now. Thank you. Welcome, Tatiana.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good night. As I was telling you at the beginning, I just got off a plane. I came from New York City. I was there for a seminar representing HNI, and I want to read a brief paragraph to sum up what we've talked about today about the role of organizations and how organizations are linked to what is happening at an international and political level. The access to justice for women in marginalized communities is a cornerstone of human rights and of resilient democracies. However, for poor and informal working women, true justice is about more than just functioning legal systems. It is about collective power and robust mechanisms to guarantee economic responsibility and equitable social programs and results. Unions and workers' organizations are key drivers for women's participation since they strengthen the necessary democratic muscle to defend justice both outside and within the workspace. I think this sums up the different situations that we've seen, how trade unions are resisting repressive governments, as the case of Argentina, how organizations in Vietnam are contributing to our sisters' self perception and empowerment. I think that this discussion has been incredible. It has been a rich exchange of ideas and experiences. So, this wraps up today's session. We would like to commend everyone present here, and we would like to thank you for your participation. We hope that you've all celebrated International Women's Day, keeping this in mind, keeping in mind the fact that we need to continue fighting. Also, I want to thank all of the organizations who are members of HNI and our sisters organizations, as well as our allied spaces who participated in this side event called Promoting Justice on the Ground, the work of home-based workers organizations.
I would like to thank Sister Laura and Sister Jemima for organizing this event. And thank you for creating this valuable virtual space that allows us to exchange experiences and give potential to our voice and sharing this with our guests in a wider international audience. Also, I would like to thank Sisters Kritika, Jacqueline Luders, and Brother Levinson and Brother Stanley for presenting us with the reality in their different countries. Home-based worker organizations play a crucial role in organizing workers and strengthening their collective voice. I also extend my gratitude to everyone who supported today's webinar. A heartfelt acknowledgement also to our supporters who joined us today. And I don't want to forget about Sister Jemima, that was the moderator today, our regional coordinators, the dedicated HNI Secretariat team, and the interpreters who ensured that our messages reached every corner of our diverse audience. As we reflect on the discussions and insights shared today, let us carry this momentum forward. Together, we are a powerful force for change for the more than 260 million home-based workers worldwide, the majority of whom are women, and whose work continues to remain invisible and undervalued. On behalf of HomeMate International, I thank you all once again for your participation, solidarity, and commitment. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tatiana. Thank you, everyone, and bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. We have learned lots of things. Thank you.